Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, Sixers, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. This is episode 112. Today is June 20th, 2022. I'm Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my torrential co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome.
Yes, I'm fairly certain I rained on something.
I mean, my hair is a little bit damp, but I don't know that I'd say torrential.
I was just saying, when you talk about me, you tend to gush.
Like a wound.
Before we get started, we do want to remind our listeners that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. That means that if there is something in the Cosmere that you have not read and you're worried about hearing spoilers, it might be a good idea to go listen or read those first and then come back and join the discussion with us. Sometimes we like to take a closer look at a specific scene or sequence in one of the books. And so tonight we are going to be looking into Words of Radiance and discussing a couple of characters' adventure in the Chasms. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we'd like to remind you that it is possible for listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InKeepersTable. We record episodes every other Monday night starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, so please join us and take an active part in the discussion. Now, as a heads up, we are going to be recording early for our next episode. We'll be doing it a few days ahead of time. That's to avoid conflict with the federal holiday on July 4th. So,
with all the booms.
All the booms. And
I,
and
for one, fought for having all the booms in the middle of the episode, but I got voted down.
Why are you lying?
Oh, I did. I wanted it. It'd be great.
You're bold-faced lying to our listeners, Jordan.
No, I am not. I fought for it.
Anyway.
The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show will, of course, continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/cosmerestudies. Even pledging $1 or $2 per episode really helps us out as we continue to work on improving the show. Patrons get immediate access to our Discord channel where you can talk about the show, you can talk about the Cosmere, you can talk about life and food and pets and not pets as food. That's just wrong. But we've got some great listeners who will listen and remind you that you should not eat your animals. So
yeah,
it is a great community with a lot of great discussions. You get early access to bonus episodes. You get exclusive access to other bonus content. You've got other great stuff. It's just a lot of fun. So special thanks to our patrons. Y'all are amazing.
It's true.
Yes.
Jordan, check-in time. How is the read-along going? The reread.
We just completed Alloy of Law. Literally posted it today.
Oh, you've completed it.
Yeah, Alloy of Law is done. We're now starting on the joy that is Shadows of Self. We're doing. You saw me go off.
An uplifting book.
Very uplifting. If you saw me go off screen for a second, it's because I forgot which chapters we were doing. We're doing prologue through chapter 4.
Okay.
And so, just
cool.
I would really like people to read ahead. Give me questions. Give me something.
And check out the videos on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/cosmerestudies.
Yeah, especially you should definitely check out our YouTube channel because now we're actually doing proper thumbnails and feedback would be nice on that. Just see what people think.
Jordan's getting artistic.
I've always been artistic. Now Jordan's not getting lazy.
He's applying himself.
All right. Well, next we have the Cosmere thing of the week.
Ta-da!
I thought we were going to get a sound effect for that.
Doink. We'll work on it. I'm still working on it. Life is happening, okay? But yeah. So this Cosmere thing of the week, it's not particularly new, but it's still particularly cool. It's from Curly Blonde Clarinet on Instagram. She designed these amazing crocheted Knights Radiant dolls. Jordan, can you put that up on the screen? There it goes.
They're super cute.
So those are freaking amazing.
Mm-hmm. We got Zeth and Kaladin and Shallan and Renarin and Dalinar.
You mean Adolin?
Is it?
Oh, maybe it is Renarin. I don't know, because Renarin is the Knight Radiant, and
I would assume if it was Renarin, it'd be with glasses.
Yeah.
But she may not have been able to make glasses.
I think it's more Adolin.
Well,
it just
okay.
He's got the collar unbuttoned a few buttons and pulling open to show the burly, the burly man chest, and so
that's true. It's a collar. It's fine.
But yeah,
it's a collar.
Anyway, they're adorable. They're worth checking out. So that has been our Cosmere thing of the week.
Oh, I should probably put this away so people can see us again.
Indeed.
There we go.
Or keep it up so they don't have to see us anymore.
I put on makeup. I know it's like super basic makeup, but I put on makeup for this.
I was talking about me and Jordan.
What are you talking about? I put on makeup too. I feel like this makes my eyes pop.
I need to put a lock on the outside of your bedroom.
I can't blame you completely.
Anyway, okay, so we are talking about Kaladin and Shallan's adventure in the chasms.
Yes.
This is just, I love these opportunities to really dig into a specific scene, because when we've been doing entire books, we kind of breeze past a lot of big stuff. And this one in particular, I think it has a lot of really rich information and character development, and there's just a lot.
There is, yeah.
I find it interesting where, at least to me, you have a high storm and an attack by the chasm fiends, and those are the two least interesting parts of this section.
I know.
I mean,
you're getting all the backstory.
That's my personal.
Really interesting.
But let's start. Let's start at the beginning. We've got everybody marching across the shattered plains, and a traitor pulls the pin from underneath the bridge, collapses everything, killing everyone but two people.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them thinking the other survived purely by coincidence.
Well, like,
either that or that they saved them somehow.
Yeah. They think that they saved each other, and they both have convenient excuses, because Kaladin's like, oh, must have been
able to pull for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then
she's like, I guess I pulled on him accidentally, or something.
She's over here. It's like,
I don't know how I saved him. Can I duplicate that?
Can I do that?
Science.
Windspren must have saved us.
Yes,
a wizard did it.
Yeah. No, I'm always a fan of when two people are trying to figure out what, like, they think that they're the exceptional one. It turns out they're both the exceptional one.
But let's talk about what happened, because Kaladin fell and starts, he's not able to surge bind because he's been having his issues with his oaths and Syl. And it was so interesting the way it kind of manifested and the way that Brandon described it, because he's falling and he reaches out and you hear Syl screaming.
Yeah.
And it's just
hurts.
To me, it almost feels like bungee jumping with a faulty cord. You hear just this rip almost. And it's like a severing of the bond.
Yeah.
And immediately the Stormfather's, and he's just like, what have you done?
I take it sort of as putting a strain on the bond, because like, it's one thing when he's not quite holding up to the oaths, but then he tried to pull on the power
in that circumstance.
Yeah. And so it was like they put all this pressure on it, and then he tried to use it, and it's what caused it to snap.
Yeah.
I think it might be similar to when Dalinar used the Stormfather as a blade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very similar, I would say. Now, I find it interesting because this is kind of our first peek at the Stormfather being wrong about something. because first off, he says, "You have killed Syl," which, and like in a permanent way.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "You will never, ride my winds again."
We know that's not right.
And, at the time we didn't know it, but
yeah,
because of that, Brandon has given us an example of the Stormfather not always being 100% reliable. And that's something that it comes back later in the book 5 prologue, which I'm not going to get into details, but we talked about it during that episode.
Yeah.
And so I just think that it's really interesting. Suddenly we're seeing the Stormfather because within this series, the Stormfather is the closest thing, as particularly at this point, that we've seen to a god.
Yeah. He doesn't seem fallible yet.
And Dalinar has been relying very, very much on the information he's been getting from the Stormfather.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very interesting that Brandon put this very definitive statement from the Stormfather that is objectively false.
Yep.
What do y'all think?
I hadn't picked up on that, but I was so caught up in the story when I was first reading it that I was like, but things are happening and I need to be concerned about the characters and, and everything else that way. So I didn't stop to go, well, wait.
Well, no, I didn't pick up on it.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on this at the first time.
I just didn't believe him. I never believed the Stormfather.
Well, the thing about the Stormfather, he's got this petulant child mentality, it feels like. He's like, no, you've ruined it. Everything is over, and I hate you.
Now it's all gone, and now I hate everything.
And like I said, it's this very petulant child, which makes sense with the Spren, because the Spren are such basic concepts. They've grown out of those things, but they're still, very young in them. They're not naturally as sentient as we see them grow to be.
Well, they're miniature versions of the shards themselves, and as we've seen, as we've seen with the shards, that if you're stuck with the shard enough, all they do is become just that one concept, and so the Spren are very similar.
But it's interesting because as the Spren bond to humans and make their bond stronger and stronger, they become less that way.
They gain more complexity and nuance to things.
And we've seen Syl doing this back and forth, in this book, because as Kaladin strays from his oaths, Syl starts to lose herself. She's flying around with the wind Spren, and she comes up and speaks to him in a very childish way. "You've been naughty," and then just flies off. And so it's a really interesting show don't tell that Brandon has done with the way the Radiant Spren interact with the bonds.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense with the bonds gaining complexity as they go up, because before, at the start, it's just journey before destination, then it's your specific one, and then you start to gain more nuance. Like, you go from I will protect people to I will protect those
even those I hate.
Yeah, even those I hate to I will accept that I can't protect everyone. And so it makes sense that the Spren would also gain that complexity as they make these O's, because the person they're bonded with is having to understand the nuances of what it is they're promising to do.
Yeah. Okay, so Shallan and Kaladin find each other and immediately begin bickering, which...
Oh, they scream at each other first, or they're like, ah! Because they're both surprised. But
and of course, this is where the ship really, really takes off. People
there are lines that I'm like, I can tell either...
Well, there were hints of it, absolutely. I do find it very interesting. I think and I really like it, that Brandon has this situation where there are feelings that don't develop beyond much, because in so many books, if there's a hint of a feeling, well, this is obviously their one true love.
Yeah.
In this, but there have been so many times where I've been friends with people, developed a minor crush, and it hasn't gone anything beyond that. And we're just friends. That's great. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't, that's kind of how it works. And I like the way that he's sort of treated Kaladin with relationships over the course of all the books, because it just feels more real to me.
Yeah, I just feel like he needs a break, though. Poor Kaladin. He just can't get anybody and keep him.
Kaladin needs to love Kaladin before Kaladin
does,
can love
but
someone
it
else.
still hurts to see, like all these chances and it just doesn't work. But I mean, it isn't fair to say that every character needs to have a pairing, because not everybody does.
Right. But Kaladin and Shallan, their relationship is very, very much the trope of slap, slap, kiss.
And I hate that trope.
And I mean, you also just have a mix of they're in a traumatic situation together too, so they're having to deal with everything.
But they've not gotten along since the very first time they met, and she stole his boots.
Yeah.
Yes, which she even brings up.
Which he brings up, yes.
He brings up, yes.
But
well, because when they bring up, like, she's like, "Why do you think I'm a spoiled Light Eyes?" And he's like, "You stole my boots for your own amusement."
He's like, "You want a specific example? Well, here's a specific example."
And again, the way that conversation was handled, I thought was very well done by Brandon, because it flowed the way a conversation naturally would. She's saying, "Why do you think I'm spoiled?" He's like, "You're all spoiled," and it very clearly shows his biases. He hates Light Eyes. We know this. This is
because
this is sort of the clear point.
Everything that's bad that's happened in his life was because of some Light Eyes doing a thing.
And so this is where he, just sort of blatantly shows his biases.
He just unloads on her.
And Shallan calls him out. I love that they call each other out on their biases. Both of them are wrong and both of them are right.
And I did like that she was like, "So let's get this straight. You put this and this and this and this and this and this on me," and he's like, "Oh no, those things contradict. She can't fit all of the boxes that he's putting her in because they don't work. She can't be all of the things that he's angry about."
No. But because he's mad that she's shallow and doesn't care about things, but he also is mad that she's conniving and it's just like, well, those are directly contradictory.
Yeah. And I did love the I can't remember the exact line, but she's sitting here going, he's like, "Well, not everybody has a cushy, spoiled life like you." And she's sitting here going, "Oh, really? Cushy and spoiled, huh?"
It's like, I wish there were more people like you who were untouched by sorrow and pain and loss.
She's like, Oh, buddy, you got no idea who you're talking to.
But the thing is, she's given no sign that he shouldn't assume that.
Right.
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's a fair assumption. It's a false assumption.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think is a really cool concept, that an assumption can be false but still fair, and can be fair but still false. This is a really, really cool look at two opposing sides that have completely different perspectives. And because of that, they're both wrong. They both see a specific part of the truth, and the actual truth lies somewhere in the middle. I love this development here.
Well, and it's as much as it's important for Kaladin in the sense of him getting to see that it's not as black and white as he feels it is. I actually think in the long term, the entire experience was more important for Shallan, because she got her to finally. I think it is because it got her to finally say the truth to someone that I killed.
Oh yeah,
I killed my father,
and that but we're not at that point yet.
No, but it's just one of those things where
I'm talking about this conversation first, though.
Yeah.
Well,
because this conversation is where they're just calling each other out, and it's really interesting because you see them butting heads, and then Kaladin, he's like, "Okay, fine. You want an example? You stole my boots the very first time we saw. You just saw a lowborn Dark Eyes who you didn't really care about, who you could play with." And it rattles Shallan.
And she does admit, I did do that.
But that conversation could have gone completely different. Because he could have struck back with that, and she even recognizes it because she immediately thinks, well, I could start blaming that on Tin, because it was her influence, and I was.
Yeah.
But she stops and she accepts responsibility for that. She's like, you're right. That changed everything. That changed the whole conversation, because it could have been bickering and, resentment and horrible. But because she stopped and admitted, okay, you've got a point there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Suddenly he's more willing to listen, because he's like, okay, whoa. That she's not just shrugging off the responsibility. And it's not something that he's used to from Light Eyes, except for Dalinar.
Yeah, and Dalinar's kind of a weird...
And a little bit of Adolin.
Yeah.
But even Adolin, he doesn't fully trust.
No, he doesn't trust Adolin just yet. But he does acknowledge, he's like, he's not so bad. When he's talking to Shallan, he's like, he's not as bad as he could be.
As he could be.
But that's the attitude, though, is he's bad. He's just not as bad as he could be, rather than he's Adolin.
Well, it's because at this point, Kaladin's still in the mindset of he doesn't want to tell anyone he's a Radiant, because he's convinced somehow the Light Eyes will take it away from him.
They'll take it from him.
Because they took the Shard Blade and everything else, too. So
and his squad and his
not freedom. To mention, it's already currently being taken away from him.
Yeah. So he doesn't want to have that added.
He hasn't heard Syl since the fall, since she screamed. He can't surge bind right now.
So it's traumatic.
So I just love this conversation, because there's growth on both sides. But because Shallan was willing to accept responsibility, I think this is important in most conversations with most people. Where somebody calls you out on something, you say, well, yeah, but you did this, and you end up in this bickering argument.
Yeah.
But if you go to him, you're like, okay, I understand. This is not cool. I have a problem here. You go in acknowledging your own faults, you can communicate so much better. And I feel like this creates a really interesting relationship between the two of them.
Yeah. There's way too many stories where they don't have the characters acknowledging their problems, just to escalate and keep the tit for tat going in the conversations, even though that would just destroy the relationship.
Brandon does such a good job of avoiding a lot of these tropes here. Because he leans into a few of the things where, for example, she mentions Adolin, and Kaladin has started kind of developing at least some form of affection for her, because she's able to ease his depression the way that Tien did. Of course, we find out Tien was also a budding Lightweaver, so there's some connection with that.
It's that, yeah.
But Brandon leans into it, but he doesn't take the bait. It's all too easy to make this a big thing. And I know a lot of people complain that they feel like this is an unexplored thread. I feel like he did it just right. This is one of my favorite things he's done in Stormlight, is the relationship between Kaladin and Shallan, and Kaladin and Adolin. There's a friendship. It's not a resentment, building storm of, there's a love triangle and everything's relying on this, and who's going to kill who, and
who's going to win her over, or whatever else.
We're not. We don't have a murder the hypotenuse. Basically where you have a love triangle and only one, and the way they solve the problem is they kill off one of the
best named trope in the history of the world.
Oh my goodness.
But I love that Brandon didn't go with that, and he went along with it. And actually, in my opinion, very real relationship.
Yeah.
Well, especially because Shallan and Kaladin would be a toxic relationship.
They can help each other in certain ways, but the negatives would far outweigh the positives.
Yeah, I think he would drag her down a little bit. Not that
They'd both
he's
drag each other
depression.
down.
They would drag each other down.
Yeah.
Because either she would just start delving into Vale to keep the relationship,
That's true.
safe, or he would get depressed, or he would try, because Kaladin's always at his best when he's protecting someone else. He would completely overcompensate.
They'd become codependent is what would happen.
No, it's
It
they're a
wouldn't be
terrible,
healthy.
terrible couple. They're great.
Mhm.
They're great as having an understanding of each other, but man, that would be like I understand why some people wanted to ship them, but man, I'm just guys, this is not healthy.
Shipping them would give the classic romantic, passionate, torrential, torment. But basically the couple where there's just all sorts of passion and throwing and yelling and but then they make up and everything's amazing and it. But
those are toxic relationships in real life.
Exactly.
Well, it's also they both have way too much self-loathing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so
just,
like I said, they would become codependent.
Yeah.
And then you'd have Syl and Pattern talking, and that would be a whole.
Well, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be they'd be fighting and they'd be saying something to each other. You just hear Pattern lies. Not now, Pattern.
This is getting juicy. Let's wait.
Yeah, no, that's what Syl would be saying.
Oh yeah.
We already know about her and her voyeurism.
Yeah. Syl's just like, shh, don't interrupt. Let this happen. I want to see.
It's getting good. It's getting good. Yeah. No, I did like that there were hints and snippets and things where you got to see inside Kaladin's head where he's going, no, she's taken. She's with Kaladin with Adolin. And as nice as that would be and how she makes me feel and stuff, she's taken. And so he wasn't pushing and being bad that way.
That's the thing. It's not this angsty, tormented, oh, why? It's just like, oh, no. Okay. This is not,
I'm going to keep it kosher. I'm going to,
don't break the code.
Yeah.
Especially not with the prince who you're sworn to protect, his fiancé.
Yeah.
Wars have been started for less.
No, it actually it could have gone into, if you've ever seen the movie from the 90s, First Night, with Richard Gere and Sean Connery and Julia Ormond. It's Arthur, Lancelot, Guinevere.
Okay.
And but it basically Lancelot saves Guinevere and of course ends up falling in love with her, and it's the same setup but completely different end game. So
yeah.
But I really like the way that Brandon went with this. I also love the way that they were able to help each other. The fact that Shallan, she looked at him and she starts talking about what this sort of grief and pain and depression and aching, just horror inside feels like. And Kaladin's just like, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And he looks in her eyes and he just sees this.
He sees it.
Just the shattered soul. And that shows that they are good for each other in a matter of support, but they're not necessarily a good match for each other.
Yeah.
And when he looks at her and he says, she smiled anyway.
Yeah, and he's like, and it was the most beautiful thing that he'd ever seen. And I'm like, oh man, that just hurts.
But the thing that's cool about that is Kaladin sees that and he realizes it's possible.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things for Kaladin in this, is he realizes there are people who have gone through stuff as bad as I have, and they can smile anyway. Not ignoring the pain, but recognizing that there's something to smile about in spite of the pain.
Yeah. I think also we've kind of touched on it already, but also him seeing that not all light eyes are just this horrible thing, monolith that he thinks that they are. And that if he, and I think there's even a line later on where he's like, he didn't realize how good he had it with having his parents love him.
Right.
Well, because he's just like, I did have good things. She didn't have that, and that's horrible. Ooh.
Yeah, she watched her mother die, and from Kaladin's perspective, he's thinking she watched her father kill her mother.
Her mother, yeah.
And then lived with an abusive father for all these years.
And then finally snapped and kind of killed him.
Yeah.
So horrible things.
Now sort of realizing in retrospect that it was way more complicated, even way more complicated than that. Right. It was already way more complicated than that.
Yeah, no, the complications have complications, which have complications.
Well, I think it's the reason her whole thing is you have to say truths, because everything that tore her family apart were the lies.
All the lies, yeah.
Because she talks about how her father didn't used to be like this. And so it's just knowing what we know, or what we think we know now about her mother and what was going on there.
Yeah.
It's like, it was going downhill for a while.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of times in relationships where things are not good between the parents, the kids are not always picking up on it right away. And other times they're picking up on it faster than the adults think they do. So I don't know. But
this graphic programmer in the chat says it was fractally more complicated.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
And I know this is a side note, but it's something that really distracts me. Her father got her an aluminum necklace.
He did?
It was very valuable.
The necklace is aluminum. And this is a man who's deeply involved with the Ghost Bloods. It's one of those things. Did he just get it because it was expensive, or what did you know, Lord Devar?
Is this a tinfoil hat?
What did you know, Lord Devar?
That's actually a very good point. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just, I didn't notice it until this reread. And I'm like, what the crap?
But, meanwhile, while Shallan has this horrible family situation, Kaladin had Tien and Lirin and Hesina. I mean, talk about polar opposite family situations.
Oh, yeah. And I think Kaladin has a line where he's like, how would it have been if I had to be the happy spot in my family, despite everything going on? And that was what she tried to be for hers.
Well, and it's just like Kaladin's, for years he's thought he has a rough relationship with his dad, and then he sees this, he's like, oh
no, very different.
But yeah, okay, so lots of chatting and interaction and interesting stuff, and then they hear noises.
Yeah, the first time I love them arguing, getting mad, and then also they hear
scraping and
they're just
trumpeting
like, Do you feel a need to put a pin in this? Yeah, this seems like a good idea.
Like maybe yelling in the caverns was not a great idea.
And these are both ostensibly smart people.
Yes.
Well, not only that, they also discover that while they thought they were going in a straight line, they've ended up going in a circle, coming back to where all the bodies are. And chasm fiends are scavengers. It's just like, we came back to the smorgasbord.
Yes, where we don't want to be.
They didn't realize they're basically making themselves the little cute things you can use as garnish on top of the buffet.
So Jordan, you were saying you really enjoyed the chasm fiend attack. Why don't you?
Well, okay. So the second one in particular. I tried to look for it for this episode. I couldn't find it. There's this one image of, because, they're running from it and they escape into just a tiny little crevice. And it's just like, it can't reach them, but it's like, its eye is just like sitting there, just staring at them.
Right there, yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that's ominous.
Yeah, I think there's comments about, they're like, that looks intelligent. I'm not comfortable with this. But it's like, no, I don't want you to be huge, dangerous, and smart.
Yeah,
it's like a dragon.
Fast. Yeah. And fast, too. That was the other thing they commented on. So, like, it shouldn't be that fast, but it is. Oh,
but
boy.
That's where Shallan has noticed the spren that are following it.
The gravity spren.
She's like, are those He's like, we're running right now. We're not noticing the spren.
She's
Well,
like,
and
I
Brandon's
disassociate. This is how I cope with things.
But Brandon has talked about how the reason that things like chasm fiends are able to exist on Roshar is because of the Spren, because otherwise their own weight would crush them. That's why we don't actually have enormous creatures with exoskeletons.
Yeah.
Because they would be completely immobile and crushed under their own weight.
And there's also like oxygen issues too. I think.
There's extra, and there's extra oxygen on
highly
Roshar.
oxygenated.
Yeah.
No, but so I love just them running from it, and both of them, like the first time they get away, but both of them are trying to hide what's special about them.
Mm-hmm.
But the second time, this is after she's been mapping out and she's realized, holy cow, I can map out the entire Shattered Plains because it's a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But no one else knew this because no one's had this angle before, and no one can map the way she can.
Kaladin's the one who said, because he had the vision with the Stormfather where he flew over the plains. He said the Shattered Plains are symmetrical, and she just said, "What?"
And she goes, "Ding!"
And it just clicked for her.
Yeah.
Hey, look, that conversation with Capsule came back.
Yeah, came back in a great way.
Cymatics.
And so he's like, okay, he suddenly realizes she's more valuable.
Yes.
From a strategic standpoint. And he's like, all right, I'm going to distract this thing. You go on, because Kaladin has nothing if not a death wish. And so, and she's like, okay, but take this.
And she tells him to go left. And
it's dangerous to go alone.
Take this. And
he's like, oh, it's a shard blade. And he comments on like it doesn't get screaming either.
And it's really, really interesting because it's kind of unclear, is the shard blade not screaming because his bond with Syl has been ripped, or is the shard blade not screaming because it's a living shard blade? He's thinking it's and
he thinks it's because his bond was like, because I think he comments about how that's ominous.
Yes.
And he's like, that's not a good sign.
But it's a living shard blade. It's pattern.
Which goes again to the fun of playing with both of them keeping secrets from one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It causes them to make different assumptions than they would normally. But
and at this point, I don't think even Shallan realizes its pattern, does she?
I think she does.
Clear.
I think she understands.
I don't think she consciously does.
Yeah, I don't think she actively knows it, but I think she knows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
so,
because this is while we're still learning about living shard blades, so we don't know that it's pattern just yet.
Yeah.
Because she's drawn a shard blade once or twice already before.
Yeah.
She used it to kill Tin. She and she's mentioned 10 heartbeats in the first book she talked about. So that, of course, just everything fits for a dead shard blade.
Well, except
but we don't know what
versus 10. She actually had the thought, of course, she could summon it quicker than that.
Yeah,
right. And that sort of makes it
a little bit,
but she doesn't want to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But
and her whole shard blade situation is weird because she's got what is it? Testament,
yeah.
Yep.
And pattern. And we don't really know when she kind of started being able to wield pattern as a shard blade.
Yeah, we don't know.
And because she sort of mixed and mashed everything up, because there are times where she has a shard blade and we're like, is this pattern? Is it testament? We don't really know.
We don't know.
No, but the thing that I love about it is Kaladin. Of course, Kaladin's totally willing to take on a freaking chasm fiend by himself with no armor or powers.
Well, I mean, he has a thought of like, well, this is probably not going to go well, but let's do it.
I mean, he beat a shard bearer. Why not?
Yeah.
Her brother. That's the other thing, is he realizes.
Yeah, at the end of this.
At the
that
end,
it was
when they're in the high storm. Yeah,
that was something that
right.
is something I feel was going to have consequences that ended up not at all.
I'm not entirely certain.
Shallan knows now. They've commented.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
I think she's grown enough with all the other situations that she's not going to hold it against him.
it's just I thought there'd be some
I did too.
consequences for it.
Yeah.
But instead, she basically blames Amaram for it
Yeah.
still.
Which is fine. I thought there should at least be a chapter of tension or something somewhere along the line. But
Right.
that's just me.
And we may find out more about all that because, there's still stuff about Helleran we need to find out with his connection to the Skybreakers.
Oh yeah.
But
there's always more.
There's always another secret.
Mm-hmm.
Lies. Anyway,
who knows? Maybe there'll be a flashback for Zeth where he, something like, I mean, Zeth wasn't with the Skybreakers while he was, but it is the Skybreakers book.
Yeah,
we may find out more about
somebody who knows something about it. Yeah,
and we may find out more about Helleran in this book because again, this is the Skybreaker book.
Yeah.
No,
book
but 5 coming up.
But no, just that fight with it. One, it's staring in on them, and just how ominous that is. But also just the fact that Catelyn's just like, well, I'm gonna go for the brain. She just sees him disappear, and then he's just like, she pulls him out, and he's just like, ow.
Well, she sees his legs hanging out, and she's like, oh no, is he still alive? She's like getting to him, and he's like, ow. She's like, okay, alive still. Let's get him out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realize, then he's like, wait, you have a shard blade. Part of me wanted him to be like, you had a shard blade the entire time, and you didn't give us this. But they then hurry and get on top. They use their dead chasm fiend as a ladder to get above the water line, and then cut themselves out a nice cubby hole. And they're just like, so, do you want to unload emotional trauma from our past on top of each other?
Also, again, this is sort of where we again see hints of a shard blade adapting to necessity because the blade shrinks down as she's working with it.
Yeah. A shard shovel would have been the best thing in that situation. Though.
Well, but digging,
sticking a shovel into rock. Like even if you get it into rock, it's still rock.
Yeah, but it's a shard shovel, so you just
need a shard lightsaber. It's fine, just it'd be great, just cut it out.
Anyway.
I guess actually a shard spatula, oversized, like maybe anime sized, would have been the best thing. Look, it would.
That seems like something something that Lift would do.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's only the second time we've used a dinnerware. But no, that's the thing. You cut it out, and then you get it's a shard snow shovel, and that's how you actually get the scooping done.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so then they just sort of cut out a little hidey hole way up the. It's very clever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And they're just like, we got to get up above the water line because this is going to be bad.
And they barely get up there in time. Like she has to pull him up.
Yeah, because his leg is still.
Well, and they still get doused by waves crashing in from time to time. So
yeah, and she's very concerned for her drawing. She's like, because they're waterproof. The bag's waterproof, but I don't know that it's high storm proof.
Yeah.
But thankfully, it seems to make it through okay.
It's like those watches that are water resistant, but you don't want to submerge them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just dated myself. That's like...
That's okay.
People don't use watches anyway.
Children, watches were things that you would wear on your left hand usually,
it's like a Fitbit without the heart measuring stuff.
All it did was tell time, nothing else.
Yeah. Occasionally, you could set like timers or stopwatches.
That's if you got a fancy watch.
A fancy schmancy one.
There might be a calculator or even a video game if you were in the late 80s.
Oh, I don't think I ever saw the video game once.
Oh, it was like the little tiger.
A Game & Watch.
Yeah, a Game & Watch type thing. It was old.
That's why it was called that. It was a game and a watch.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Mr. Game & Watch. I don't like fighting.
For our audio-only listeners, Jordan did the hand twinkle effect for the more you know.
That'd be a good one to add to the soundboard, Bill. Put that somewhere. Remember that. Just whenever we get a random factotum out of nowhere.
There we go.
I'll have to find that one. But yeah, the flood, basically, it's a flood in two ways. It's a flood where there's just a high storm gushing through, and then there's a flood of information and emotions and stories and
Yeah, because
And I did
everything.
appreciate that he didn't reiterate, he didn't redo every single line. It was just, and they told, because I mean, there's a point of showing where
Mhm.
it's too much showing when we all know what already happened there.
Mhm.
I need to summarize.
Yeah.
some.
Well, there's a point where showing becomes telling.
Mm.
Well, it's also
It's
we
like
don't
they
need to
actually did
rehash
show.
everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We know, and we know that
We know.
they're gonna know once they actually start talking.
And it's all because she doesn't want to listen to the storm. It's making her uncomfortable, and so she's like, "No, I need talking. I need distraction."
Yeah, distract me.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also they both need to
unload.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because they refuse. Because like Kaladin has refused to talk to anyone, especially Elidais, about this
Mhm.
because he doesn't. Because he thinks they're going to take it from him, and
Mhm.
she needs to tell her story because she literally needs to tell that truth.
To process it, yeah.
Well, it's also like for her oaths.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
she needs to say it. She needs to tell the truth. And she's
Yep.
finally confronting the truth. I killed my father.
And that is her oath.
Yeah. And and in this horribly creepy singing like soft kitty to him as she's doing it, and
Oh my goodness, yeah, the lullaby,
Uh-huh.
that was freaky.
yeah.
And like I thought it was interesting that here's
Sleep,
her
my
brothers
baby
are
dear.
like all like backing away from their father who's paralyzed temporarily on the floor, and she goes up and finishes him, not her brothers.
Which is sort of where Vale first came from.
Yep.
Because she was there to protect her from those sorts of things. She was there to do the things that needed to be done, but that Shalon was absolutely terrified of.
What the father had fully broken her brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, and you see it like in the few scenes we get with them, you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
That they're still they haven't figured out how to cope with that.
Well, the scene where I think it was Jushu, he was the one. Was he the one who?
I think Jushu's the
he's
drunk.
an addict.
Yeah, he was the gambler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
and
addict
when the people came to collect on his debts, and the father was just like, "He's no son of mine." And so they took him, and Shalon and her brothers went out and said, "Hey, take this, say, give us our brother," and the way that he responded, you could see that had broken them. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he basically abandoned his son and was just like, "No, this is not."
It's because the father
happen.
himself has his issues that he wasn't
Mhm.
dealing with.
And so he took it out on each of the kids in different ways, and each of them developed horrible, problems, issues.
When you see the only one who had any sort of independence was Helloran
Mhm.
because he left. But part of it was his leaving is one of the things that like set everything down this path.
Yeah,
And it's just
catalyst that just made everything worse.
Yeah, and it's just one of these things where it's just there's no when you're in a family situation like that. Because again, it goes back to the lie. The reason this is all happening is because Shalon killed her mother, and the father
Or dad
has
because Shalon's mother tried to kill her.
Yes, it's like it's perfect. There's nothing wrong with what she did, but the father basically let that reputation, tarnish him because he wanted to protect his daughter. But in doing so, he set himself down a path of madness, and like it's just that original lie is what sets everything down, like this domino path of these lies compounding upon each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of Shalon's journey is understanding that we have to deal in truth, and also that despite all of this, that you can move on, you can deal with things.
Yeah.
Because obviously way ahead into Rhythm of War, it's Val's final message that it's now time to bring me in fully. I
Mhm.
was your
Yeah.
veil. You don't need me
Right.
anymore.
It's time to step into the light, as it were. No, it's such an emotional scene. And again, that's why I find it so it's just, I use the word fascinating too much, but it just works so well because we have two very, very action-packed moments, but the emotion matches, if not surpasses, the action.
Oh, it way surpasses. I mean, no one ever brings up the Chasm Fiend fight is their
Mhm.
favorite part of this. In fact, in fact, I mean, I've heard so for me, this chapter, like these chapters don't move me as much as most people, from what I can tell. For these aren't struggles that I personally have. I'm much more closer. My issues are much more closer to Kelsier and the Lopen than these two. But when you see people who
Megalomania?
yes, definitely. I want this understood. Megalomania and delusions of grandeur. It's Bill, when I first proposed this podcast, what did I say? I said I totally think people will like to pay to listen to us talk about things.
I really do need to put a lock on your door.
No, but it was one of these things where, for me, I wasn't as emotionally I thought it was beautifully written. I wasn't as emotionally moved, but seeing how people, especially people who are dealing with similar issues themselves, have reacted to these chapters. It's one of these things. It's like when you have a friend who's a really good musician react to a song, even if you're not musically gifted. You're like, oh, there's something, if they're, there's something more here than I realized.
There's some weight to it, yeah.
Or if the person who hates RPGs says an RPG is good, you're like, okay, that means something.
Well, it's like I did a seafood boil for my nephews and nieces yesterday, and my niece, who doesn't like seafood at all, she said, "This is really good." And I was just like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and meanwhile, if I say it's good, Bill knows, like, that doesn't mean anything. Jordan will eat anything if shrimp is involved.
If shrimp is involved, you're a stamp trap.
Yeah, definitely. So. I might as well be a horn eater. Like, I love me some seafood.
I would have so many problems in Roshar. Like, me and chicken were tight versus me and seafood. I don't know.
Yeah, but if you eat chicken in Roshar, you might be eating like a parrot or a pelican or something. I know.
Well, they had chickens too, though. So
did they? We don't know.
I sure hope so.
One thing I do know, so for the record, Bill's shrimp boil yesterday was amazing. But second of all, getting the image for today's thumbnail with the giant chasm fiend on it, I seriously looked at those legs and I'm just like, oh, think of how much crab meat's in there.
Jordan wants to go to Roshar and have
I want to kill a chasm fiend and I want to eat it.
He wants to have a chasm fiend boil.
Look, they can have the gem heart. Just give me one of them legs.
I'll be good for a month.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of the gem heart, they do go back and carve the gem heart out of the chasm fiend because, I mean, there's a perfectly good gem heart there waiting.
Yeah.
Don't want to lose money on this.
The scene where they come back and Kaladin just sort of, he has the gem heart. He's like, here, I got this for you.
This is where it's cemented. Kaladin is the drama queen for me. Like, because Kaladin, he can't just drop it. He dramatically drops it with the flair that even Kelsier would be proud of.
Well, you know what it reminds me of is in Mass Effect 3, which has its own issues, but there are some amazing moments. When, spoilers for Mass Effect 3, jump forward like 15, 20 seconds if you haven't.
At the same time, that game is like 9 years old at this point.
Exactly.
And they have a legendary version now.
But when Grunt comes out of the thing and she's like, any of you guys got something to eat? It's just sort of you shouldn't have survived. I'm going to come in and speak casually while you can clearly see I've had the snot beat out of me.
Well, my favorite part is Shalon's like, oh my goodness. It was already dead because she doesn't want to be like, are you kidding me? They'll know.
Yeah.
She's looking at him like, really?
We couldn't have beaten a Chasm Fiend with our bare fists, Kaladin.
I just love this triumphant return. Except Kaladin's just like, I couldn't have beaten it. You know, he's thinking I couldn't have beat a sharp bear with a spear, and I did that, so why not?
I mean, I did it with smaller things.
No.
You called me Kaladin Stormblessed.
Here we are.
Go.
No, but
yeah, and I did like that there was also a bit where you know, like Navani comes in and she sees Shalana and she's like, "Oh, Mother Mode has been activated," and she just like swoops her up.
Loved that. Because because Navani has been standoffish to Shallan. She's been very cold to her because Shallan is the one who brought news of her daughter's death, supposed death.
Yeah. So, well, more importantly, was there, and so there's that inadvertent, impossible.
Why did you survive?
Association.
Yeah. Why didn't you help my daughter?
Well, it's like, why did you survive? You know, what's so special about you that you survived and my miraculous daughter didn't?
Yeah.
Choose answer C. They both lived.
But this moment where Navani just opens up, like she because Mother Mode really does just fully kick in.
Yeah.
And it's an important moment.
Yeah.
It forges a relationship with them like that couldn't have been there before. It just destroys a barrier. You know, there's walls coming down all over the place from this high storm.
Oh yeah.
It turns out life and death defying situations are really good icebreakers.
Oh yeah.
But it helps Navani to break through her block to Shallan. You know, and because suddenly she sees a young girl who's been to hell and back, who is also the beloved of her nephew, who's almost a son to her.
Yeah. And, so she's
and
like,
is the son of the man she loves.
Yeah.
So she can't just watch her being, you know, or dress all tattered and, you know, and she's got mats in her hair and she's all beat up and bedraggled and can't have that.
It really helps to humanize Navani because we've seen Navani hurting and it's just one of those, Navani's hurting, but this is so much bigger than that hurt. She's like, okay, you know what? Get past it. I have to move on. It's awful. You know, I've been through something awful, the worst news I could ever expect to receive. But I have to put that aside right now. I need to step up and, you know, be the queen.
And I think it gives her something to do.
Yes, it really does.
Which, when you are that stressed out and dealing with that much grief, you need to do something. And Navani especially, she doesn't do well with just sitting. She needs to do.
Yeah, when you're feeling sorry for yourself, one of the best things you can do is help someone else.
The other
feels like it sounds kind of productive, but it isn't usually.
Yeah. The other thing that was really cool about the scene is this is one of the first fulfilled death rattles that I can remember.
Which one?
This one, it was just from Way of Kings. It was, they come from the pit, 2 dead men, a heart in their hands, and I know that I have seen true glory.
Yep.
Oh, that's right, because he gets glory spren.
And the chapter title is True Glory.
Subject was a rickshaw puller.
There we go. Thanks, rickshaw puller.
Unfortunately, that was by the Silent Gatherers, so you know his death was long drawn out and horrifying.
Unpleasant.
Yep. Oh man, I love this scene. This sequence rather.
Yeah, it's like 4 or 5.
Because it's a few scenes.
Yeah, it's a couple chapters long. It's the other thing that's unique about it is typically we don't get this many back-to-back chapters about the same subject matter. The only thing that breaks it up at any point is Tef's perspective we get, where he opens up a bit about the Invisagers.
And a brief flashback.
Yeah, the flashback where she kills her dad.
Yeah. But that felt sort of like her telling of the story.
A little bit.
Yeah, because otherwise you didn't have those details yet, which are kind of important.
But no, it was constant. And look, there's a reason that people bring up this scene. Like this is one of those scenes that I see all the time in the Cosmere subreddit get brought up. Someone's like, I just read this scene. And
people say, you know, there's the duel, there's you cannot have my pain.
Oh, yes.
There's, there are certain scenes. You Will Be Warm Again, of course,
Oh, yeah.
which is one of my favorites, and which is a scene, I think, another scene we should also have an
Mhm.
episode on. I think there's
You have
so
to bring
much
the
in there.
tissues, man.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the mining scenes for just episodes is something we haven't done. Like, this is only the second one we've done, but
Third.
it's something we can definitely do more in the
Third.
future.
Is it third? What was the other? Because we did.
There was the one you did, which was Silence's fight.
Oh, that's right.
There was
Yeah,
one that
Silence's
Jordan
fight.
did with Kelsier versus the Inquisitor, and there's this one.
No, that's one. Yeah.
Okay, I forgot about the Silence fight.
This
One.
graphic programmer, we chose exactly.
Shows. Oh man.
There are
that
certain
one.
scenes where you only need like 1 or 2 words, and people
you're
know
like,
exactly what you're talking about. This one, the chasms.
Yes.
You cannot have my pain. Just there are certain scenes. If there's a scene that you would like us to discuss in a future episode, send it to us. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. That'd be great.
Because there are so many to choose from. If there's one in particular you want us to do, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. The other thing is just how cinematic, and which is weird to say for, a segment that's mostly walking and talking, which a lot of people don't, that doesn't work for a lot of people. But it's still like the way they actually deal with their issues and their problems at the same time, as we see them build a rapport with one another. But it all stems from being willing to give each other some leeway.
And another little thing is like the setting isn't just a backdrop, it's interactive too, because there's like where she's drawing the different fronds and different things that are happening there, and he makes even a comment or two where he's like, do you need to draw that too?
Yeah,
she's like, do you know how many stump weights I've seen? I'm wondering about this other thing. And
it's not the white room conversation. They're walking, and it's painting a picture of the environment. Like you said, it's very cinematic. You actually see where they're walking. And also, it's interesting because we learn a little bit about Shallan's process, because her drawings of the when she's drawing out the map, she's shading in, and she's actually making it look like, instead of a simplified map, she's making a picture.
Yeah.
She's not a cartographer. She's an artist.
She's not a cartographer at all. She's an artist. And she's a realism artist.
Oh yeah.
Except for when Vale pokes through and makes goofy drawings and
these little cartoons. Yeah.
Vale and Wayne would get along.
Vale and Wayne would love each other.
Oh man.
Talk about toxic relationships.
But it'd be funny.
Yes, it would. That's okay. We have Milan for that.
Yep. Anyway, anything else come to mind before we're like that we haven't discussed yet about this scene?
I just loved it. I was like, I'd forgotten how good this scene was. It's kind of funny. I was out camping and one of my kids was trying to read over my shoulder on my phone, and he kept being like, what's that? And I'm like, I can't even begin to explain that to you. We're just gonna
What does no mating mean?
And he's like, Parshendi murdered. What's a Parshendi? And I'm like, it's a people. Let's move on.
So I've brought her up before. There's a channel that does not have enough love, and so if you like anything Brandon Sanderson, Kaya Reads, she's reviewing books, but when she does a great job of animating everything she's talking about, but whenever she brings up Parshman, it's just a crab is what the picture for a Parshman is. And it makes me laugh every single time. And she's like, Eshadai, you just see a crab. And then Eshadai gets possessed by the Stormbringer. She's fighting Adolin, and it's a crab holding a knife. And I'm just sitting here, I'm just like, I like this person. They have my sense of humor.
Oh man. All right. Well, we love hearing from our listeners, so keep sending in your questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere. You can drop us your ideas for topics that you'd like us to discuss during the show. While you're at it, we'd love to hear your feedback about how you think we're doing, as well as any interesting theories you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere. You can send all questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and hopefully we could read that as part of the show. And we do have a a mailbag episode coming up. Listen for more about that at the end of the episode. We do have a P.O. Box as well. That's the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. We've also got our own personal projects outside the shows. So, Jordan, why don't you start us off and let us know where we can find you?
All right. Well, you can find me on YouTube, which I have to say, we've been doing Operation 4000 to get to 4,000 hours so I can get monetized on YouTube. And this morning we are officially at 4,003 hours watched. So we did it.
Nice.
And so I'm now in the process of hopefully getting monetized. I've applied for it. Apparently, I have to wait for AdSense to go through. And then after that, they're going to review it. And they're like, it could take up to a month. And I died a little inside at that news. So if any of you are of the religious bent, please pray to whatever God and/or spirit to speed that along, because I need that money, because I've also found out I need a root canal this week. Oh, good times to be had. So if you'd like to cheer me up, twitch.tv, youtube.com/splicestream.
Mm-hmm. And Amy, how about you?
My teeth are not needing a root canal, so that's good. I'm sorry, Jordan. My Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my TikTok is @coincidencecosplay. And my website is www.coincidencecosplay.com, and that's a lot of coincidences. So I am actually
So it's a
gonna run
conspiracy,
D&D
is what you're
saying.
saying.
Conspiracy cosplay.
I'm sure somebody has that name, but not me. Anyway, so I'm really, 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 really close to being done with my Nazgul. I don't have any good pictures of it yet, but now one of my children wants to be a Nazgul too, and that's gonna be fun. And then my other child is gonna be a Hobbit. So eventually there will be pictures of that, and then I am gonna run a D&D module for my children, and I'm still really bad at posting pictures. So if you want to follow me, that's great. But I don't know what's going to be up there. But hopefully I'm going to do my D&D group on my TikTok in the very near future, because I have all the costumes. I just need to actually film myself and hope it works well.
Nice.
So yeah.
It's going to be good.
As for myself, in addition to I've been going on a lot of cooking adventures lately, loving it. It's been great. But that doesn't produce any content for you, so I don't know why I mentioned it. I do have another podcast.
Just want to let everyone know how balling your life is.
Dude, I love to cook, and I am proud of the seafood boil that I did yesterday.
I'm proud of that seafood boil as well, and want to do whatever I can to encourage more of that.
If that's the case, I'm raising your rent.
Dang it.
So,
seafood, you
then I'll be able to
trade me.
Then I'll be able to afford to do more seafood boils, because they're not cheap.
They're not.
I do have another podcast with my friend Dylan. We talk about board games. It's called The Innkeeper's Table, and we have new episodes on Friday mornings. The most recent episode, we actually did a mailbag episode where we answered a listener's question. They asked how my plans have been going to eventually open a board game cafe, and I had to come to a few realizations about myself and where my life currently stands. It was a very existential episode for me. So if you want to hear me have a minor crisis, you should check that out. The next episode coming up this Friday is another Spiel des Jahres, which is the Game of the Year winner spotlight, Railway Rivals from 1984. I believe it was 1984, 1985. One of them. I think it was 84. Not Railroad Rivals, which is a game that has the same name and tends to come up when you Google it. This is Railway Rivals. And so we talked about that game, had a lot to say, and we're probably going to follow up on it just once we get a few more plays into the game as well. So you should check both of those out. Again, that's the Innkeeper's Table podcast. For those of you who want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, but you cannot become patrons, we would love it if you would just let your friends know about the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. Basically, get the word out, get the views up, and then toss us a good review wherever you listen to us. We would appreciate that as well. And then head on over to store.streamelements.com/Cosmere Studies to buy Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies merch. That's right, merch. You too can look as fabulous as we do. but none of us are wearing any of the merch, so that
No, we're not.
doesn't have any.
But you can imagine, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Special thanks to our patron producer. What?
Don't we have a giveaway?
Do we have we do have a giveaway.
Yeah, I
Good
tried
call.
to put a message.
I missed that. Jordan, Amy, why don't you? So let's talk about the giveaway.
Yes.
So as a reminder, the way to enter was we asked people to comment on our posts on social media and let us know if you were one of Stephen Leeds' aspect, what role or what need would you fill of his? And so we had a few entries, but when we have giveaways, that's the best way to go about it. Is you go to our social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And respond to whatever prompt we give, and that'll get you an entry, up to 3 entries into our giveaway. So, Amy, why don't you do our drawing to see who is our winner?
So I have the list, so we need Jordan to do the numbers.
All right, clicking. And
oh, it actually is doing this.
There we go.
No,
the number is 3.
Okay, so this is Twitter. This is Jean-Marc. My aspect would be an expert in Cosmere knowledge. So there we go. So we will contact you and get you that book or the
and the winner and they won a copy of the Many Lives of Stephen Leeds omnibus of the 3 original Stephen Leeds trilogy.
Yes.
So we'll get that sent to you ASAP.
Yeah. Okay.
Any final thoughts?
I'm glad I didn't ride out a high storm or have to live in that, because that's too much water and corpses and no.
7
I've gone
10,
camping.
Too much water.
I've gone camping in storms, but nothing like that.
Yeah. My final thought is I need to hear what Chasm fiend meat tastes like.
And again, I think that this is some of Brandon's best writing when it comes to interpersonal conversations, relationship development, and character growth. I think it was excellently done.
It was really good. And there were lots of bad puns too.
We can forgive that, I guess. But
of course we can. If anyone is, good for bad pun forgiveness, it should be this show.
Special thanks to our patron producer, Mim's Laundry Service. You could ride out a high storm, but after we mend and wash your clothes, no one would believe you. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. Wow, I said Innkeeper Stable. Dadgummit, I did it. In addition to the live... I hate you. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/innkeeperstable every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. Next time, we'll be doing another mailbag episode where we answer your questions and discuss your suggested topics. We'll be starting with a discussion on where silver fits into the Cosmere, but we'll be branching out from there. So get your questions in as soon as possible by sending a short, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com. Then show up for the live discussion at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday, July 1st, 2022 at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. That's right, we are going to be recording a little early next time, since our normal recording would fall on the night of July 4th, and that's a holiday people normally celebrate right in the middle of when we record. So again, that's Friday, July 1st, 2022. Until then, though, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.